Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul, and I am a nerd, and this is the July 2009 water cooler, which is what we call our virtual user group meeting for Tabs 3 and Practice Master users. Before we start today, a little bit of housekeeping. Most of you are familiar with this, but for those that are new, we have this little box that is appearing on the right-hand side of your screen and probably taking up room and possibly covering up what you need to be looking at. So you'll notice there's a little box that juts off to the left of it. If you click this arrow that looks like arrows, or icon that looks like arrows pointing to the right, that will go away. That big box will slide right out of the way, and when you do that, this will turn into an icon that looks like arrows pointing to the left. So if you need to, you can click it again, and it'll slide the box right back out. There are two things you need to know about as far as how to ask a question. There's a button right here that looks like a hand with an arrow in front of it that's pointing up. If you can't already guess, that means raise my hand. So if you click this icon, we will see that you have a question. We will unmute you, and then we will go ahead and let you ask your question. If you're feeling shy, you can instead go to this questions box. You would have to expand this and pull this big box out again by clicking this icon here. And type a question. We will see it right here. You type it, we'll see it. We'll ask it and answer it. And if you have follow-up questions, you can either raise your hand or type a follow-up question. Okay. There will be extra time for questions at the end because we're covering in just one topic today, and it's a topic that lots of people have lots of questions about. I think we are at the highest level of attendance we've ever had for a water cooler. So we will allow extra time for questions, and if we run out of the half hour and you still have questions, we will keep the lines open until we're done, and you can, of course, always email questions to paul.purdue, like the school, not the chicken, P-U-R-D-U-E. That's paul.purdue@attorneycomputersystems.com. So with that said, we are going to talk about, what are we going to talk about? Unallocated payments. Unapplied, unallocated payments. They are a problem if you don't understand them. If you do understand them and know how to handle them, they are not a problem. So we are going to talk about them in great length today. We're going to give you a little history. We're going to look at some examples of why you'd get them and what they are. And then Mary Jo's going to move on and talk about some of the problems you can encounter and how you can solve them. So for starters, a little history. Any version before version 14, that's versions 12 and before, when you would enter a payment into Tabs, if you were integrating with our general ledger system, you needed to break that down into how it applied to fees, costs, and advances by simply making separate entries. There were ways to pull them together to show them as one entry, but you had to break them down manually. When you'd go into the payment entry screen, it would say that this person for this matter owes this much for fees, this much for costs, this much for advances. It still does that. But then you would have to manually apply that $1,000 payment by saying $100 of it goes to costs, $50 of it goes to advances, and the remaining $850 goes to fees. In version 14, things changed drastically. And in my mind, they changed for the better. Now, if you're one of the people that has, since version 14, had problems with unapplied payments, you may not be thinking that they changed for the better, but hopefully when we're done here today, you'll agree that they did change for the better and that you're better equipped to handle these unapplied payments. In version 14, we got to a state where the level of integration between Tabs 3 and General Ledger was so sophisticated and could be defined in such detail that no longer did you need to manually apply these payments into General Ledger. They would be applied automatically. Okay? So what that means is if you enter a $1,000 payment into Tabs, and Tabs, as you know, has always known that 50 of it was for advances, 100 was for expenses, and 850 was for fees. Now, Tabs knows that and is sophisticated enough to pass that information to GL all in one group of transactions so that you make one payment and goes over to GL and goes to the right places. It's even so sophisticated that you can break the fees down not on one but on two levels. So you could say, well, we don't just want to show fees, but we want to show fees by the attorney that did the work, or by the attorney that's primary attorney, or by the category of law. So you can actually have income statements that show things like fee income Bob, fee income Joanne, fee income Sam, and actually break down your fee income by the attorney, or even by the attorney by the category of law. Very, very sophisticated. Also, this is happening at the exact moment that you enter the payment, and before version 14 that wasn't true. Your payments would not be allocated prior to version 14 until you ran some routines at the end, until you actually printed what we called the receipt allocation report. Therefore, it was not real time. You couldn't see how it allocated, at least in the tab side, until the end of the month. And if you needed to make a change 2 months later to a payment that was entered this month, that would cause problems because it had already been kind of locked in. Now it's real time. Now it happens totally and seamlessly at the time of the payment entry. But that creates a situation where if tabs doesn't know how it breaks down, it has to put it somewhere. Let's take an example. Let's say that old Mr. Smith, he's 88 years old, and he's changing his will again. He's sitting in the conference room, meeting with John, the attorney. They're there to sign the will. Mr. Smith signs his will and immediately pulls out his checkbook. It says, "John, how much do I owe you?" Now, John doesn't know, so he goes in and he asks Mary Jo, who is doing bills, and she looks it up on tabs, and she says, he owes us $150. Now, we've got the entry in there. We know that that's what he owes us. We haven't sent him a bill yet, but we know by looking that, yeah, that's what it's going to come out to. So Mr. Smith writes us a check for $150. John says goodbye. Mr. Smith leaves. John takes the check into Mary Jo's office, puts it on her desk, and he goes back to work. Mary Jo, a couple minutes later, picks that up along with all the other payments that came in the mail, and she starts to post them. And we're going to do that. We're actually going to pull up, and I'm going to do it, and you probably would be doing it in payment entry, but I'm going to pull up, Mary Jo, that was Kelly White, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And it's her will. Divorce. It's her will. Her will. Which one is that?
You're in different information.
Why do I have so many clients?
You're in different information here.
That's interesting. Hold on one second. That's the beauty of these virtual user group meetings. When I do something like this, you can't see me sweat.
You're in live data.
I see. I gotcha. Time out. Here we go. I had to put that in there to demonstrate the proximity product, the work tracker product. Okay.
There you go.
Let me take my my Kleenex and wipe the sweat off my forehead. Here we go.
That's what I'm here for.
Yep. And I'm in the practice. I don't mean to be in here. I mean to actually get out of Practice Master altogether. Go into tabs. Nothing like being prepared. This will come off very well on the recording of the webinar. Okay, I'm going to go into GL also because we want to see this from both perspectives. And here we go. Now, so here we are. Mr. Smith, was it Old Man Smith? Is that who it was? Mr. Smith has left. Well, it's actually Kelly White, and Kelly must be a man. So Mr. White has left, and we've got his check for $150, and Mary Jo goes in, and she's going to log this payment. It's a new payment. It's today. This is my demo system, so my demo system thinks it's November 17th, 2009. It's today. We're going to say that he paid us $150. It was check number 1001, and that's it. We save it, and this pops up. Okay. Why? Well, think about it for a second. Mary Jo told John the attorney that Mr. White owes us $150, but she didn't print a final bill for him. And she certainly didn't update it. All she did was come in here and run a draft statement and say he owes us $150. He wrote us a check for $150. Tabs has no idea. It knows that he owes us that $150, but we haven't billed it. And so Tabs doesn't really for sure know that that's what that $150 is for. If you ask Tabs right now what Mr. White owes us, he doesn't owe us anything because we haven't printed a bill for him. And that is the root cause of unapplied payments. That is the root cause of unapplied payments. Tabs doesn't know what he owes us money for. Now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to finish this off. But before we do, I'm going to explain that in a minute we're going to final bill this and we're going to update it. And we're going to see how that affects this unapplied account. If you get this box and you don't know why, you should stop right there and figure out why. This is where your problem lies. If you have people that are not accounting oriented but they help you enter payments, they should be trained that if they get this box and they don't know why and they come to you and you don't know why, that they should go on and you should figure out why. Because if Tabs doesn't know that the client owes you this much money, and you go ahead and say do it anyways, and you don't know why and you don't know how it's going to hash out, that's a problem. Now there are a couple other things that could happen. We could have entered $1,500 and it's telling us that you entered $1,500 and the guy only owes us $150. Then we could just go back to the payment entry window and change the amount. It could be that we selected the wrong matter, and then we should go ahead and cancel out and restart the entry and do it for the correct matter. It could be that you intend to put this in client funds because the client came in and gave you $1,000 and you're going to put it in the client funds portion of Tabs, which is like trust accounting, but for people that don't have the trust accounting module and don't want the sophisticated capabilities of trust accounting. Or it could be that you've gotten a check for $4,000 from somebody who's paying for 4 different matters, and you've applied $1,000 here, and then you're going to go on to apply the next to this other client ID, and the next to another client ID, and when you're done, you're all applied. But if it doesn't fall into one of those categories, don't just say save the payment with the unapplied amount to be applied to future statements unless you know that that's what you want to do. Now, in this instance, I would think, oh, you know, I haven't printed a final bill and updated it for Mr. White. I'll do that in 10 minutes. Or I'll do it at the end of the week when I'm doing all the rest of the bills. Or I'll do it at the end of the month when Joanne does the bills or whatever. That's fine. Because then what will happen is Tabs will put it in unapplied, and then later, when you print that bill, if it's 10 minutes later, if it's a week later, if it's a month later, you don't want it to be too much later because you don't want it to transpose into different months, into different financial periods. But as long as you know that that bill is going to be printed and updated later, it's fine to go ahead and say, okay, let me put the payment in, and we'll update the statement soon or at some point later. So that's what I'm going to do. And I have now made the payment. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to go back to the screen, and now you'll see that the client actually has a credit balance of $150 because, as far as Tabs was concerned, when we put that in, he didn't know anything, so now he has a credit balance. But that'll be washed out when we bill this $150 in fees. Let's go to GL. Let's look at journal entries, and we're going to pull up journal entries, and here is that $150 payment. So we're going to pull it up, and as you can see, we have put $150 into the operating account, okay, and we have debited or credited unapplied payments, okay. Now, that's what Tabs needs to do. That's what GL needs to do because neither of them know where this goes until we print that final bill. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I'm going to get back to here, and now, 5 minutes later, end of the week, end of the month, let's print a final bill for Mr. White. I'm going to do this right here by printing a final bill, and I'm just going to preview it. In case you don't know, you do not have to, and I'll go ahead and zoom because I know that some of you are looking on screens that this looks much smaller on. And here we have preparation of will, $150. We have that payment, negative $150. We have a balance due of 0. We close it up. You do not need to print a final bill. You can display it. Displaying a final bill is fine as far as what we need to do. And we're going to update statements. I'm not going to back up because it's my demo system. I'm going to say, okay, he's updated. Bam, we'll get out of here. Now he doesn't owe us anything. Now if we go back to GL and look at journal entries and pull up this batch of entries, we will now see that originally this came in and was put in the bank and was credited unapplied, and then when I printed and updated the final bill, based on the statement date, it was then removed from unapplied and put into fee income where it belongs. Okay? That is the scenario. That is what's happening. That is what unapplied payments are. I'm going to turn things over to Mary Jo now, and she's going to tell you all about all the different ways that you can get into trouble with unapplieds.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to go back into the tab screen. And on the payments window, when he first came in here and was going to put that payment in, another key as to that this is going to go to unapplied, even before that screen opens, is if there's nothing down here in the fee, expense, advance, finance charge, any of that, then a final bill has not been updated. You may have created that final bill and you might have had it out there, but someone didn't update it yet. A lot of times I'll have clients say, well, I know we prepared a final bill, but then we go into the pre-update statements report, and yes, they did prepare a final bill, but they didn't update it to move that AR, that WIP up into the AR. Once it's moved to AR, then it's going to show down here, then it's okay to put the payment in. So that's the first key. Of course, when you get the box, Paul talked about that already, you need to know why, what are you going to do with this? And then the other thing that you can run into is if you try to reverse a payment. If you don't come in and do an actual payment adjustment and go through and reverse the payment properly, you can get those GL error messages that come up that journal entries may need to be made. The same thing will happen if you try to unupdate a statement that included a payment that was paying for those fees that were on there. A message box is going to come up saying that you have a GL error report, and when you print that, it's going to say journal entries may need to be made, adjusting entries may need to be made. When that happens, it's not adjusting that unapplied. So if you reverse a payment that was included on a statement improperly, or you unupdate a statement with a payment on it, that can trigger these errors, and they need to have different journal entries made to correct that. So it's always best if you get a GL error message to go over to the general ledger and see if it's actually reversed out exactly how you wanted it to. I have had firms that, they get those and they just put them in a stack and they keep them going. They don't look at them. They don't even know what to do with them, so they just kind of put them aside and, hold on to them. If you get a GL error message that something needs to be done, you always want to double check it. And chances, most times the journal entries have been made and you're okay, but sometimes they're not, and you'll have to make manual entries to get that out. Now, speaking of manual entries in general ledger, I also see a lot of times, I'm going to go back into that entry that Paul had, and you'll see that when it first made the very first part of the entry, when it deposited the money into the bank account, it debited my bank account and it credited the unapplied. I get people that they have done that, they have not reversed a payment properly, or they don't want to have unapplied, so they think I'll just make a manual entry because they do their general ledger report and they see unapplied as this huge amount, so they just want to go in and make an entry to reverse the unapplied and then put it where they want to manually. The problem with that is you can see when Paul updated the statement, it automatically makes those entries for you, and if you've already went in and you've created a journal entry to manually take that money out, and then you update the statement, it's going to take it out again, and your unapplieds are going to go the other way. So you're not going to end up zeroing that account out like you want to do. So the key is to reverse your payments properly by going through payment adjustment. If you unupdate a statement, double check to make sure that the journal entry has been made and it's proper, because then you will need to make a manual entry. You'll notice that when I'm in here, the unapplied payments, if I double click on it, I can't change it. It's grayed out. That's why, because if you update the statement, then it's going to go ahead and do it for you. It does not want you to go in and start changing unapplied, because later on that can cause problems. The other thing, I want to show you a couple places where you can keep track of your unapplieds so that you can either run a report monthly or weekly, however you want to do that, so you can keep track of those. And like Paul said, there might be instances where you know that it's unapplied and it's okay because you know that's going to come out at the end of the month, or maybe it's a contingent case and you're going to settle it, and so you don't want to worry, whatever. I don't know what the different scenarios that you could have would be, but a place that you can go to start monitoring that in your reports. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. And if you go to your reports screen, you got all kinds of stuff open over here, Paul. Okay.
I'm funny that way.
All right, reports. Under management reports, there is an unallocated payments report. And if we run this report, I'm not sure if we've got any out there. We'll try this. We'll go ahead and say OK. I'm just going to run it for all clients. You can go in and do a date range and everything if you want to, but I'm going to do it for all. And I can see right here that I do have one for Kelly White's divorce case. I do have an unallocated amount of $1,850. She had sent in a payment of $2,000. I could apply some of that, but not all of it. So in this case, you can see that I do have unallocated. Now, maybe there is a reason. I know I'm not, the divorce is going to settle, or I'm going to use up all that fee information, or I do have, that, and I'm going to go ahead and get the unallocateds out soon. That's fine. But if not, if I was supposed to have billed for this, whether with a flat fee or some kind of entry that I hadn't made or that I haven't done, or there is a statement out there that I need to prepare, or this was supposed to go on to a different one of her matters, this is where I can see it all. All of my unallocateds will be here, and I can find out what happened. So that's the first thing I would do is either, like I said, weekly, monthly, however you want to do this, run this unallocated payments report and keep track of them so that they don't get out of control. I've got firms that call and then, they haven't checked this for years and they've got years of unallocated. They don't know what they are and what they're doing with them. They've just been out there and they haven't worried about them. And this is something you do want to stay on top of. So the unallocated payments report in tabs. In General Ledger, if you come in, you can run a balance sheet. And if you do a balance sheet, that will show you if there are any unallocateds here. I'll preview this one. And let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay. And you can see I have a column on here. Do we have any unallocateds? Let me go down. I got to scroll down here just a little bit. I'm going. Let's see here. I have a very slow scrolling screen apparently. Okay. So under liabilities, you can see I've got other liabilities, unapplied payments, and this will give me my balance in that unapplied payments account. So in this case, on the balance sheet, I do have some out there, and so then I can go in and I can actually look at that and see what's going on with that account there as well.
Now, some of our clients, Mary Jo, have these set up not as a liability, but under income, so that if you were to scroll up here and you would see it show up right here. Well, it wouldn't, I'm sorry, it wouldn't even be on the balance sheet. It would be on the income statement. Some attorneys want to see the unapplied payments as income, even though they're technically not yours until they get applied. So, and you can argue either way about whether it should be a liability that shows up on your balance sheet or it should be an income account that shows up on your income statement. So if you have it on your income statement and your attorneys don't want to see it there because they feel it's a liability, all we have to do is kind of rearrange things, or you have to rearrange things, however you want to do that, and rearrange your payment posting from tabs. But it can also show up on your income statement as an income item if that's the way you've elected to do it.
Okay. The other place that you can monitor unapplied payments and see what's going in and what's going out is right in your general ledger report. And I'm going to go ahead and just run a general ledger for just the unallocated account. And we can see all the activity. And this is sample data, so there could be some outdated stuff from last year or whatever. But I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here so you can see. But I can see, I scroll over to the side here a little bit, that for Kelly White, when we did her $150 payment, you can see where it credited the account, and then you can see where it debited it back out. So it went in and it went out, and that would zero out. Now, this is carrying a balance forward from who knows, because like I said, this is test data. So that was a prior year that there's not even anything that exists for it. But this should start off with a zero account, and then this will go up and down, and it should zero itself out if things are going in and out properly. So you want to go ahead and kind of watch things here in your general ledger report as well to see what's going in and out. Now remember, making manual entries because you want to zero this out isn't the answer. To actually clear those out, you really want to go back and either update that statement for it or find out what happened that the entries aren't in there. If you had, like I said, if you'd reversed a payment or incorrectly, or you had unupdated a statement before, then manual entries may need to be made for those particular entries, but not a mass amount to get everything to zero. Okay, that's all I have. Any questions?
No hands raised, no questions. The bottom line then, Mary Jo, would be you need to bill for what you're logging a payment for. If it's a situation where you haven't billed simply because you think, well, this is a standard divorce at $1,200 and I don't need to prepare a bill because I already told the guy how much it's going to be, well, Tabs needs to know. You may not show the guy the bill, but Tabs needs to bill. No, you need to produce a bill, even if you just view it in final form and then update it, so Tabs knows how to do that. The number one reason for unintended unapplied payments is that you do not have a bill already in the system. And if you don't know why you've got these unapplieds, that's probably why. And if you say, well, this is the way we do it, well, you need to change the way you do it so that at the very least Tabs knows why that client is making that payment.
And I see this a lot of times, Paul, with flat fees as well. You're charging a flat fee for a certain service, and so you don't want to create a bill for that because it's a flat fee. We're just always going to charge this amount, and again, that's where you can run into trouble. So
exactly. Now, if you've tried the flat fee feature within Tabs and you don't like it, there are a lot of other ways to bill flat fee. That's just one way that they develop to help certain people do certain types of flat fees. But the bottom line is you need to let Tabs know how to bill, and then you won't have unapplieds. So the number one thing to teach people and to understand is if you see that box when you're making a payment and you don't know why, stop. Find out why. Fix the problem, and then enter the payment. If you enter the payment and you don't know why, and then you get distracted and you never figure out why, it's just going to be a compounding problem that really never goes away. So keep that in mind.
We do have one question. They're asking, should you run a final and update even if it has a credit balance? Yes. If you've already entered that payment in and it's created a credit balance, then you need to go ahead and you have to run a final and update the statement so that it will clear that credit balance out.
Yep. Having a credit balance, that's what we did just now in our example. Mr. Kelly paid us $150. We entered it, and it showed a credit balance of $150, but also showed WIP of $150. And by printing and updating that final bill, all we did was kind of create that wash that brings it back down to zero. Any more questions? I've got a hand raised now. Let's see, Amy and Judy. I guess it's Judy that's got her hand raised. I'm going to unmute you, Judy. Judy, what's your question?
I noticed that you have set up the ability to make your fees go to more than one account.
Yes.
In other words, you said fees for Bob and fees for Henry or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Have you, in the newer versions, made the adjustments so that you can make your costs go to different accounts?
Yes.
Because we weren't able to do that prior.
In the original release of 14.1, you didn't have much flexibility in how the payments for costs and advances broke down. But now you have that same, it's two-level, isn't it, Mary Jo? Now you have that same two-level ability to push those costs through to the appropriate GL account. So that change has been made.
How many, or does that go by T codes, or how do
it can go by T code. It can go by special transaction codes. payment transaction codes, but it can be, for instance, by either time transaction code or by category. So if it was, you had 14 different T codes that represented some sort of telecommunications expense, and you wanted it to push through to, but you also had those grouped under a category of.
Here's, I've got the screen open here for you. Here's the configuring of the payment, and you can come into cost. You can see you can do that by primary, secondary, originating, timekeeper, and then you also have the secondary option to do any of those as well. So you could do it by timekeeper and then payment T code, or you could do it by cost type and then attorney. So you have lots of different options here.
Okay, if you do it by T code, is there a limit of how many can be used, like 3 or 4? Or?
No. No. You just have to go through and define each one. And what you do is, when you define them, you also define what we call a catch-all called all others. So let's say you define 5 of them because those are the ones that you want to go to a specific place.
Right.
But then all others go to that 6th place, then you just simply define the all others and you're ready to go.
Okay, well, did this just start with 15?
Nope, it started in 14.2, one of the interim releases for 14.
Okay, because we haven't been using it because that wasn't available before. So.
Right. Right in the very first release of 14.1, that was not available.
Okay, so now I'm going to have to figure out how to do this again because we undid it. So, okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Any other questions? Any other hands raised? One more hand. Hold on. No. Somebody keeps raising their hand and putting it down. Is that my brother Bill? Is he messing with me? Okay, no more questions, no more hands raised. That will do it for this month. Do join us next month where we're going to be talking about using, we've got some more questions. Hold on one second. We have clients that make monthly payments but might only have billable work once a year. There will therefore be a credit for months. When you say they have monthly payments, who asked this question? Linda. Linda, are you connected? Linda, I'm going to unmute you for a second. Okay, Linda, are you there?
I am. Hi, Paul.
Hi. When you say they have payments, is this like a monthly retainer?
Yes.
Okay. What we recommend, we have a lot of clients that have monthly retainers. We have several that work for the Ohio Education Association, for instance, and we simply set up a certain type of fee entry or a billing entry that basically bills that monthly retainer, and then it's getting billed. And then we set them up to also log their time so that they can, sometimes this is a retainer that's a flat amount. For instance, I think most of our clients that work with OEA or MEA, they'll bill a flat, let's say $20,000 a month or $60,000 a month, and they may work $58,000 worth of time, they may work $72,000 a time, but they just get the flat $60,000. That's one way that we can set it up to be billed and therefore have the payments make sense. Another is that you'll bill a flat amount, but then you bill for amounts that go over that. We can set it up that way too. Bottom line is we need to be billing for that monthly retainer before we're posting the payment for that monthly retainer. I won't go into a lot of detail here because there are a lot of different ways we could set it up depending on what your unique circumstances are. But if that's what's happening, if it's a monthly retainer, TABS needs to know that that's what that money's coming in for before the payment gets posted. It's just a matter of making sure that we set it up that way so that TABS is being able to apply that properly. So if you have money coming in on a regular basis, but it's not really for any set work, it's a retainer or a progress billing sort of situation, there are ways to do that in TABS. There's a specific one that comes to mind is specifically progress billing, where you can bill a flat amount every month and apply payments against it. So a lot of ways to handle that particular situation, but you want to make sure that you're getting something on the books before that payment's applied.
Okay. We have another question. What about write-ups and write-downs? Will this affect unapplied, i.e. an attorney accepts amount less than was billed? Assume it could create unapplied. Actually, write-ups and write-downs aren't going to affect your unapplied. And especially if he takes less than what was owed. This is usually when they pay more than what is owed. So if you've already created a bill or you've already wrote up or wrote down the case, that's not going to affect it. It's if you don't bill at all, if you have not created a bill or they pay more than what the bill was for. So that's when you get unapplied in situations like that.
So no, it won't affect
No.
write-ups, write-downs, write-offs, anything like that.
No.
Okay, is there one more question?
That's all I have.
Okay. Very good. Is attorneys? Okay, I gotcha. Okay, very good. No more questions. That's it for this month. Colors in the Practice Master Calendar, how to use them, how to make them signify special things. That's one of our topics for the August 2009 water cooler. The other will be getting time into tabs from sources other than fee entry. And this can also apply to costs. We have one client that's a patent and trademark firm that gets a bill every month from their foreign annuity maintenance company that may have literally hundreds, if not thousands, of entries for individual cases where foreign annuities have been paid on behalf of trademarks and copyrights in those foreign countries. They pull it in through Practice Master. Everybody out there has a free copy of Practice Master, and you can import time and expenses and advances directly into Practice Master if appropriate, and have them go straight through to tabs. We also have this neat new product called Work Tracker that can take care of time that's spent on cell phone conversations and smartphone conversations and pull it right into tabs. So we'll be investigating other ways to get time into tabs other than simply entering fees, expenses, and advances. So that's it for this month. Have a good day, everybody, and thanks very much.
Bye-bye.